Today was poised to be a big day in the world of video games. The Xbox Series X was getting an Inside Xbox presentation, where we were going to get our first look at the Xbox Series X in terms of the games, and more importantly, the gameplay for these games. The event just wrapped up, and well, there were some things I liked about this presentation, and there were some things I didn't like about this presentation. What's going on, guys? I'm RGT85. If this is your first time on the channel, be sure to hit that subscribe button. But without any further ado, let's talk about the Xbox Series X unveiling, all of the games that were shown, and what some of the problems were with this presentation. So the Xbox Series X has been doing a great job of getting its name out there. Ever since it was unveiled at the Game Awards 2019, people have been talking about the Xbox Series X more so than the PlayStation 5, just because we've seen things from the Xbox Series X. We saw Hellblade 2 running on the system. We of course saw the system itself, and it just feels like we know more about the Xbox Series X than the PlayStation 5. So a lot of momentum is going in Microsoft's direction right now. Now, this Inside Xbox presentation was going to be the first gameplay unveiling of third-party titles for the Xbox Series X. So obviously this was going to be a monumental presentation, and it under-delivered for a lot of people, and we're going to explain why that ended up happening. But I basically just want to go over the games that were showcased during this, what I liked about this presentation, and then some of the things I didn't like about this presentation. So to start things off, we had Aaron Greenberg from Xbox with a really crappy webcam. Like, I don't understand how these people who are working from home that work for companies like Microsoft don't know how to use like a proper webcam and have like good visual fidelity, but I digress. I guess that's not a huge issue. It's really about the games, and the first game we were introduced to was probably the most impressive game for this whole presentation, and that was a game called Bright Memory Infinite. It looked like a weird sort of combination of, you know, gunplay, and there was sword play as well. You had a grappling hook. There was some really insane weather effects going on as well. Just the whole game itself, the visual style of the game truly looked next generation to me, and I was pretty much blown away by what we saw from this game. We also saw a segment where the main character gets into a car, and then there's like a car chase sort of thing going on. And the most impressive thing about Bright Memory Infinite was that this is an indie game being made by one individual person. So this person is obviously a genius, because I thought this game was by far the most impressive game that we saw from this whole presentation. Maybe not the most revolutionary style of game or anything like that. Obviously we've seen these elements in from other various games, but I thought this game was a great way to start out the presentation. Next up, we were introduced to Dirt 5, which is of course a long-time Codemasters racing franchise that is now coming to the Xbox Series X. And you were basically racing on a variety of terrains. There were some jumps and whatnot. These games aren't really super rooted in reality. There are some arcade elements to them, and I thought it looked solid, but one thing I did notice was it didn't really seem like all that much actual gameplay. It looked more of like a cinematic trailer for the game, maybe using in-game assets, of course, but you know, the camera positions and things like that. Obviously, you're not going to race with these sort of camera positions, you know, as you're racing in the game. I would have liked, you know, a standard behind the car or a cockpit view to sort of get a feeling as to how the racing was going to be done, but it did look decent enough. The next game was a game called Scorn. Now this game will be on Game Pass, and it's really weird and creepy. I liked the music that we saw, but once again, this really wasn't gameplay. This was more of a game introduction. It really just sort of played out like a Tool music video. If you're a fan of like Maynard and stuff, like I expected him to just sort of like start singing a song and like some weird, you know, rhythmic guitars to start playing. But yeah, we didn't really get any gameplay for this game Scorn. We sort of got a look at the world and how it's pretty much a Tool music video come to life, and then that was pretty much it. But I did think that the game had some sort of promise to it. Next was a game called Chorves Rises 1 Covers. I'm not sure how you say this, but this is a game that is going to be using the smart delivery system, which essentially means that you get a free upgrade to the Xbox Series X version of the game if you purchase the game on the Xbox One. It's a space shooter. It looks kind of neat. You know, there were some barrel rolls and stuff blowing up. Nothing too crazy, but I did think the visual style of the game looked pretty nice. Next up was a surprise game to see at this event, and that was Madden 21. Now with Madden 21, they started it out with a cool little retrospective of the series that I thought was pretty neat, and then you got a 2-second glimpse of the actual game. And I guess what we saw from that little glimpse was kind of cool, but once again, it's like, where's the gameplay? Like, you're announcing this game. I think most people expected Madden 21 to come to the Xbox Series X, but I think I wanted to see a bit more gameplay when it comes to sports games, because obviously sports games are usually some of the games that you see the biggest jump in graphical fidelity with. I remember when, you know, the transition from the NBA 2K series to the Xbox 360, and it was like, wow, the Xbox 360 game looks so much better than the original Xbox game. So I was hoping to see a bit more gameplay from this. What's interesting though is they sort of teased a smart delivery system for Madden 21, with that being if you bought it on the Xbox One, you would get a free upgrade to the Xbox Series X edition, but it looks like it's not quite like that. It's something special that EA is doing with this game, where if you get it between, you know, a certain release time, you can get an upgrade to the game for the Xbox Series X by March. So I don't know, kind of weird, kind of a bit misleading, but you know, EA is going to EA. Next up was probably the most non-next generation looking game, and if you know anything about this franchise, you would know that these games never really look good. That is Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines 2. This once again is another smart delivery system. I actually liked what we saw from this game, but it definitely did not look next generation. Maybe some of the environments did, and that's something we'll talk about a bit more as the video goes on. But as far as the character models were concerned, like, they didn't look next generation at all. I thought the game looked creepy. You know, I like the whole little Christmas tree thing, and the world itself looks pretty neat. Obviously you're playing as a vampire, but not really the most banger sort of game to show off for a next generation system. Next up was a game called Call of the Sea. This will once again be a smart delivery game, and it was a stylized adventure game that takes place in a first-person perspective on an island. Once again, nothing really sort of huge or groundbreaking, but it is nice to see a new IP. And then we got another game called The Ascent, which was another smart delivery system game. Obviously this smart delivery system thing is picking up steam. I didn't think it would be utilized quite as much as that has been utilized, but a lot of companies seem to be putting their time and effort into the smart delivery system, so I think that's definitely a positive thing. It's sort of a twin stick shooter cyberpunk game with sort of a top-down perspective. I didn't think this game looked all that great as far as a banger of a next generation game. The environments themselves looked pretty nice, but we did actually see some gameplay from this game, which I thought was kind of cool, because that was just sort of a trend that we didn't see really sort of continue on throughout this presentation. Next up was a game called The Medium, which is a sort of psychological horror game. There was a cool looking cigarette. I don't know what the hell was going on with this game. It will be a game that is available on Game Pass though. It's basically a psychological first-person perspective horror game. Not really indicative of gameplay though. This was just a cinematic trailer. Next up was a game called Scarlet Nexus. This is a game coming to us from Bandai Namco, and since it is a Bandai Namco game, I can only show this game in little sort of chunks because Bandai Namco is very protective about their trailers. How dare people talk about our games, is what Bandai Namco says. This will once again be another smart delivery system game. It's basically an anime style hack and slash game, kind of reminded me a bit of games like Astral Chain. It sort of looked like a Platinum game that I think a lot of fans of Japanese style games will enjoy. I thought it looked pretty cool. The graphical style of the game looked pretty nice, but not really all that much next generation. Maybe when it comes to things like frame rate and overall resolution, you'll start to see some more improvements. Next up was an online squad shooting game called Second Extinction, and you know what? I really like this game because it had dinosaurs in it. I thought the dinosaur dismemberment when you're blowing away these dinosaurs actually looked really good, and it almost had that sort of next generation feel to it. I thought the worlds themselves looked kind of barren and just sort of boring, but I thought the dinosaur blowing away stuff looked pretty cool, and it looks like a game that I actually will enjoy checking out and playing. Then of course we got a sort of a surprise game, Yakuza Like a Dragon. This will once again be another smart delivery system game, and we saw some gameplay from this game, which was kind of nice, but once again it didn't really have all the bells and whistles of a next generation game. It pretty much looked like a standard Yakuza game with some things like better environmental effects and just some better effects overall. Once again, this will probably be a game that it emphasizes, you know, frame rate and better resolution on the Xbox Series X more so than the Xbox One version of the game. It is interesting that this game will be actually launching on the Xbox Series X alongside of the other platforms as well. The Yakuza series obviously is something that has been primarily on PlayStation platforms, so it was cool to see a Yakuza game come out on the Xbox Series X on day in with the other versions of the game. And then finally we got the gameplay reveal of Assassin's Creed Valhalla, and well, yeah, you can see where I'm going with this. There really wasn't much gameplay. It was once again just sort of a cinematic trailer. They did like a V-trigger and a spear. If you're a wrestling fan, you will be well familiar with those moves. And I thought the character models themselves looked really nice. The animation looked very fluid. But once again, it really wasn't a gameplay trailer. It was more of just sort of a showcasing of the graphical engine that will be used in the game, not really showing how you will actually play the game. And then that was pretty much how the presentation wrapped up. So there were some good things to take away from this presentation. I'm not going to be overly negative. Like, I've seen a lot of people on the internet being with this presentation, but I can kind of understand why they are being a bit negative towards it. So to sort of recap, let's talk about the positives from this presentation. As far as the positives were concerned, for me, I enjoy learning about new games. And we learned about a lot of new games, and more importantly, a lot of new IPs as well, which I think is very important when you're talking about a new system. Yes, obviously, people like their sort of IPs that they are well familiar with, but I think a game like Bright Memory Infinite, this game looked absolutely fantastic, and I feel like without a presentation like this might have been a game that sort of just went under the radar. This was obviously the most impressive game that we saw from this in terms of how the game is going to look, how the game is going to feel, and how the game is going to play. So I did enjoy learning about new games for the Xbox Series X, but one of the takeaways was I don't think Xbox quite knows what gameplay means, because a lot of this stuff was cinematic trailers, and while it was cool to learn about these games, we didn't really learn how these games were necessarily going to play. A game like Scorn, for instance, like, this was a cinematic trailer. There was no gameplay in that whatsoever, yet this was being touted in a gameplay presentation. People wanted to see things like maybe Cyberpunk, maybe see things like how the Xbox One version of the game is going to be and how the Xbox Series X version of the game is going to be. Do like a side-by-side comparison like you did with things like the Xbox One to the Xbox One X, where you show why people need to upgrade to an Xbox Series X platform. The lack of sort of big IPs, I felt, hurt this a little bit, and the lack of just gameplay in general did hurt it as well. So that's why a lot of people are upset by this. People were expecting to sort of be blown away by this presentation, as this is really the first time we got a deep look into all of the Xbox Series X games, as to what games were going to be coming from third-party companies, and a lot of these games were just honestly smaller titles. Like I did say though, I did enjoy this presentation. I thought it was decent. If I had to rank it, I'd probably give it like a 6.5, maybe to a 7 in terms of how I felt about this on a scale of 1 to 10, but I definitely understand why a lot of people are upset by this. I understand why a lot of people do feel let down with this. I mean, at the end of the day, it was an Inside Xbox presentation. Like, I can't really recall the last time I was blown away by an Inside Xbox presentation, but Microsoft has fired the first shot into the gameplay sort of stuff when it comes to next generation gameplay. It's definitely going to be interesting to see how they follow this up. Of course, they are going to be doing a presentation very soon with the first party games that are coming to the Xbox Series X, and I feel like that's where you're going to see more of a generational leap. But now PlayStation maybe has a little bit of footing to get on here. If PlayStation and Sony could come out and maybe show some gameplay of their games, maybe people will get a little bit more back into the Sony camp of things. At the end of the day, I'm buying both systems anyway, so it doesn't really matter to me. But let me know in the comments section down below what you felt about the Inside Xbox presentation. Did you enjoy this presentation? Were you let down by this presentation? And do you think Microsoft will ever really learn what the word gameplay means? And as always, folks, thank you for checking out this video. If you're new to the channel, like I said, be sure to subscribe and turn on notifications. Check out other videos on the channel. We did a video earlier today if you're watching this on the 7th, so make sure you guys check that out as well. And as always, I'll catch you guys on the next one. Later.